Do you like guacamole? Do you like chips? Do you like margaritas? Well, think of bats.
Today I'm visiting Bat World Sanctuary. I have always been fascinated by bats. I hope to learn more about them, how they affect our ecosystems, and what they can teach us about love and community.
We are dedicated to the rescue, rehabilitation, and education about bats. Insect bats and fruit bats come here from all over.
The fruit bats, in particular, have often come from very horrific backgrounds. Places like zoos, the exotic pet trade especially, laboratories, they cannot be released because they're not indigenous to the United States. So when we get those bats in, we provide any medical care that they need, and then they join our population in our fruit bat enclosure. Our insect bats, on the other hand, are indigenous to the United States. Any bat that we can rehabilitate to be released back to the wild, that's what we do. So when we can, we rehab, and when we can't, then we rescue.
Education is a huge part of what we do here at Bat World Sanctuary, both for the public and for wildlife rehabilitators.
We really strive to educate the public about the positive things that they do for our environment and for our planet, and to dispel the myths that keep people afraid of bats.
Until my visit to Bat World Sanctuary, my understanding of bats was pretty limited. Dracula, vampire bats, and other dark cinematic representations formed my opinions.
A lot of times in Dracula movies, when you have the vampire bats, what you actually are seeing is fruit bats because they're big. And actually, in real life, vampire bats are very small.
A lot of people also believe that all bats drink blood. In reality, out of 1,300 species, only 3 species of bats actually consume any blood at all. Those species are mostly in South America.
The biggest misconceptions about bats is everybody thinks they're mean and ravenous and scary, but they're, super sweet. Just, you can't be scared of that.
Bats are very cute, but don't they carry rabies?
Most people believe that bats inherently carry rabies. That's not true.
Bats are mammals. Any mammal can contract rabies.
Like any mammal, bats can catch and pass on rabies, but they do not inherently carry it. Less than 0.5% of all bats in the wild will ever contract the disease.
I was struck by how deeply misunderstood these fascinating creatures are. It sparked my curiosity about the roles they play within our ecosystems.
Bats who eat insects perform some really key benefits to humanity. They help dispel diseases,
keeping us safe from mosquitoes and the viruses that they carry,
because they are eating those insects.
One bat is capable of eating thousands of insects a night, which offer billions of dollars worth of pest control for our crops.
So they're very beneficial in that regard.
I had never really thought about insectivorous bats as pest control. So what about fruit bats?
Over 98% of reforestation is actually thanks to the pollination that fruit bats provide us in the wild. They are major pollinators of thousands of plants, and a lot of the things that we eat every day wouldn't be possible if we didn't have bats.
Now that I had learned about the benefits of bats in the wild, I wondered about who they are. Are they intelligent? Are they unique individuals like us?
We compare them to dolphins. A lot of the species, actually, they're capable of using syntax, so they can create sentences like me and you. They talk to one another just like we do.
They teach each other things. We have a Corellia that likes to steal treats from our fruit cart, and she has taught other Corellias that we just brought in to do the same thing. And so now we get a little tiny swarm of Corellias on the fruit cart when we bring it in.
You can tell the bats apart after a while by their personality and the way that they come interact with you.
Bats by nature, they're not going to be affectionate with humans, but when they are babies and they're being hand-raised, we are definitely mama.
Tinkerbell was hand-raised here, and when she was of age to join her colony out here, we thought it would be an easier transition to put her in a little hut and let her kind of leave as she pleased. But she really liked it there, so she didn't, and she in fact had some other bats move in with her. Yeah, she put together her own little family in there.
They're very social creatures. They form tight family units. They grieve the loss of their companions.
They're very gentle.
They're very peaceful little animals that just want to live and do their thing.
So we take in bats from all sorts of different facilities. A lot of those are AZA accredited, while Their accreditation is considered top tier in the zoo world. Unfortunately, their standards for bats fall short in a lot of ways.
Zoological guidelines, they're not always beneficial for the actual bats. Enclosures that are not ideal for the bats.
And oftentimes aren't up to the standard that we keep here at Bat World Sanctuary. We recently did a rescue from a facility, and they eventually decided to surrender those bats because of a mold problem, and that the enclosure was no longer safe for the caretakers to enter. What they hadn't considered is the bats had been living in that for years. They weren't worried about the animals being in those conditions, and it was only at the point where it was unsafe for the humans to enter. It's really important for bats to be able to keep their cycle and know night and day. When they're in a zoo enclosure inside with no skylights, no windows or anything, they lose that sense when they can basically change their schedule. They want people to be able to see them. They want them front and center.
People tend to want animals to conform to their schedule and don't consider what's happening to the animal.
Because they have such big personalities and because they are so intelligent, they need a lot of enrichment. They unfortunately don't get a lot in zoos, and they really need it to be happy and healthy.
The captain, he is 18 years old. He is an Indian flying fox, and he is our largest bat here at the sanctuary. He can't fly because since he was in a zoo environment for so long, he was in a very small enclosure, and he essentially just never really took to flying. Once the zoo decided to shut down that exhibit, the African fruit bats were euthanized, and thankfully there was one keeper at the zoo that kind of had taken a liking to the captain and decided to place him with us. But we're very lucky he at least got here. We just wish we could have saved the others as well. Unfortunately, with a lot of facilities that are more driven by the tourism angle when it comes to animals, it's more about the people than the bats. Sometimes animal care falls short in that respect. The money goes other places. AZA doesn't require any sort of population control with fruit bats in captivity. The public wants to see babies, and so that does lead to a lot of breeding in zoos, but eventually they do run into problems with overcrowding. The lucky bats end up here with us. Unfortunately, there are a lot of facilities that do euthanize them once they are no longer able to put them on display to the public. AZA zoos have actually been selling bats into the pet trade because of their overpopulation problems.
We have a bat that was kept in a little glass box on a counter for tourists to look at when they stopped at the gas station.
To have a happy and healthy bat, they need dozens upon dozens of their own species. When they are sold as pets, it's generally 1 or 2 bats at the very most.
The emotional toll that it takes on the bats can be very difficult because they are social animals.
And being alone, not having enough enrichment, improper diet really does a number on them, and often they just don't survive.
People do not know how to properly care for these animals. They don't understand their social needs, their emotional needs, all of their physical needs.
Some of our bats, even that were rescued from exotic pet trade, don't have a lot of teeth, or the teeth are really bad just because they were fed improper food.
They're wild animals, and it's the same problems that you see with keeping other types of wild animals. And it's terrible for their mental state as well a lot of times as their physical condition.
They're not pets, they are wild animals, and this is a sanctuary for them to feel safe and feel comfortable and still be wild animals. The very definition of a sanctuary is to be safe. A lot of these bats come to us traumatized and hurt. It is our priority to make that a sanctuary and make this permanent home a safe place for them to recover.
And animals are so forgiving. And over time, they get to know us and we get to know them.
That true, caring bond that, every creature on planet deserves to have.
It's true forgiveness in a real way.
We have the choice to either make it a prison or a paradise, and we choose to make it a paradise.
The difference between a sanctuary and a prison is you.
The reality of exploitation within the zoo and exotic pet trades is heart-wrenching. It's comforting to know that all the bats here receive the best possible care and are treated with respect and dignity.
So this is our geriatric ward, or as we like to call it, the geriatric ward. We have some elderly bats in here that need a lot of extra care. So this is Miss Sweetness, and she has some cataracts going on, so she doesn't see very well. And then after they get checked over, they get a treat, and they go into their clean pouch. And we always flip them upside down and gently let them get comfortable in there, and she's good to go.
The bats here will live their entire lives free from harm. But I was curious to find out what's threatening bats in the wild.
Habitat destruction for wildlife, including bats, is a huge problem, and so much of that comes from livestock farms. A lot of wildlife, including bats, are being ran out of their homes because of deforestation and animal agriculture. So one thing we do here at the sanctuary, we are a vegan organization, and we do ask that our staff follow a plant-based diet while they're here at work.
Bat World's advocacy for a low-impact diet underscores their commitment to conservation. But how do we address these conflicts when bats and human spaces overlap?
As we build more and take away their natural roosting sites, bats naturally move into human areas.
And so exclusion is a process of where you seal up those holes so that bats or squirrels or anything else can't get back in there. The problem is whatever is still in that building is left to starve.
The thought of suffering without hope of escape is unbearable. I wonder what the humane alternatives are to this cruel practice.
Humane exclusion is the process where you basically create a one-way door where they can, once they come out, they can't get back in. And then after you know everything is out, then you can permanently seal that hole. It's just the humane thing to do.
One thing we get asked a lot is how people can help bats at home. One really cool thing you can do is a bat house.
Bat houses are great.
Bat houses basically just provide a safe roosting spot for bats that possibly are losing their spaces due to humans.
You do need to get a certified bat house because if they are poorly constructed, they will do more harm than good.
You can also plant native plants. Anything that's going to draw in insects to your yard is also going to draw in bats.
Cut down the pesticides because that has a trickle-down effect and it's deadly. When you hear people talking about bats, always dispel any of these false notions that you're hearing people say about them. You can educate them on why they don't need to be scared of bats and why instead they should be very grateful that they've actually had an opportunity to see one.
My journey into the world of bats has profoundly shifted my perspective. These creatures are not only complex and intelligent, but share much in common with us.
They work together, they sleep together, they live together, and they love each other. They support each other. So they can teach us to be better people.
They're so intelligent and they do form bonds with us. Getting to experience that is such an honor.
I'm really grateful that I've had the opportunity to learn what I've learned. When you get in and you get to work with them and you get to know their little personalities, it's really special. It's really special.
And I do have hope, especially for new generations to come. More people are wanting to get involved. More people are seeing the effects that humans are having on our wildlife.
Compassion makes your life harder, but it also makes it more fulfilling. These little tiny animals are complete individuals. We can learn so much more about these animals for who they are, because it is so important to know our fellow creatures. If you know better, you'll do better.